Hello and welcome to Schweet Shiznitz. I am your host, Jason White.
And I'm your hostess with the mostest, Krista White.
You sound like you have not quite the mostest.
I'm a little tired. I'm working on it.
Okay, well, let's see what we can do. So we are going to be dropping our episode late this week because when we were supposed to be watching a movie and dropping an episode, I was dropping something else.
Let's not be gross.
So
one of our hosts keeps getting sick, and it is not me.
Yes, the last few weeks, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I got a bad cold that delayed our episode. In the in-between week, my mother broke her ankle, and she is now in a rehab facility rehabbing because she is unable to stand or walk on her leg. And while she was in the process of being moved from the hospital to the rehab, I decided that I would start having explosive vomiting and diarrhea.
Did you have to say the other word?
I did.
Why don't you just say you had an intestinal virus?
I had an intestinal virus.
And I've been taking care of said host who's been sick, so I'm just really tired.
And taking care of making sure that my mom had everything she needed at the rehab center. So
that's true. And we've also taken in a third dog who needed shelter while her mommy was in the rehab. So mommy was in rehab. Sounds like your mom's in a drug clinic.
Yes, my mom is in rehab.
So we are taking care of my sister-in-law, which is Jason's sister. And her name is Sadie, and she's a little Australian Shepherd who sheds a crap ton of hair every day.
Yes, we have a Siberian Husky who we thought shed a lot, and he does shed a lot. But this dog is about 60% the size of our Siberian Husky and produces twice as much hair.
Yes.
Also, this dog somehow, because of her height, when she walks, her hair drags the ground. And so she picks up things when she's outside.
She's like
and
a
brings
broom.
them inside. Except she does the opposite of a broom.
Correct. She deposited.
She actually
deposits.
She takes the outside stuff and brings it inside and leaves it in the house. Mm-hmm. So our house is constantly a bit dirtier.
She's a good girl, though.
She is. She's very. She's an attention whore.
That's true.
But our golden doodle, who does not shed at all, he is also an attention whore.
But he's mommy's boy.
Yeah.
He's having a little bit of a rough time.
Yes.
Having an extra dog here.
Having to share attention. Because our husky doesn't really care. Like, he likes to get a good belly rub every now and again. But for the most part, he's like a cat. Like, he doesn't really care that you're here and ignores you most of the time.
True.
And just looks at you judgingly. So, obviously that's why you guys are listening, is because you want to know all about our pets. So welcome to Pet Talk with Jason and Krista.
Oh, I could definitely do one of those all the time.
And, but that's not actually why we're here. Schweet Shiznitz is a podcast where we watch 80's movies and we talk about them. Typically, or sometimes when we have them, we talk about our 5-star reviews, but none of you have given us any new 5-star reviews. So
wow, guys, thanks a lot. I don't feel very special.
Get with the program, people. We need some 5-star reviews. Now, specifically on iTunes, because I can't go to every podcast format out there and check for reviews. If you put a review somewhere else, and you want to send me an email at 80's Fun Pod, sorry, we're not 80's Fun Pod, at sweetshiznitz@gmail.com.
Way to go.
I will go check it and I'll read it on the air. But if you review it on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, I'll see it right away and I'll know all about it. Also, those are the ones that help get us noticed and get our attention out there to people and get us more listeners. So if you want other people to enjoy the podcast, now if you think our podcast sucks and you don't want anyone else to listen to it, then don't do that, because you're just going to be subjecting more people to something you hate.
So we just, like literally just moments ago, finished watching The Goonies.
We did. And we normally also talk about our patrons. So we do have patrons. We don't have any new patrons.
I guess I can't talk about the movie.
We will talk about
You want to
the
talk
movie.
about a patron.
So, but obviously we would appreciate new patrons. That's how we're able to improve the podcast. We would love to get
Yes, if
new
you don't want it to get
equipment.
any better, then just don't help.
Yeah, if you think the podcast sucks, once again, become a patron. We can get better. Send us suggestions. Buy us new equipment. Hey, if you don't want to be a patron and you just want to send us equipment, send me an email. I'll let you know where you can send the equipment. We'll use it. So,
Now can I talk?
yes,
We just moments ago finished watching The Goonies.
the Goonies,
The Goonies.
all of them. Mm-hmm. I think there ended up being like 8 Goonies.
I don't know. I didn't count them.
So, we watched The Goonies.
The Goonies.
The Goonies is a 1985 movie.
I asked Alexa what she thought of them, and she told me she had no opinion on that matter. And then I asked her if she'd watched them, and she said, I don't understand that question.
Alexa does not have eyes, and I need to stop saying her name or she's going to start answering.
Correct.
But
So we should move on.
The Goonies was produced by Steven Spielberg. This is our 3rd Steven Spielberg movie that we've covered out of 15 movies, 14
Apparently
actual episodes and one
apparently
bonus episode.
We like him.
Well, he made a lot of movies.
You're making a lot of microphone noise over there.
So, yeah, we got a little bit of an echo going on here.
Oh, there's an
that's-
airplane.
Yeah, there's an
flying
that's not
overhead.
me. That's an airplane.
It's like, oh, your
Sorry.
stomach's acting up again, man.
So it was produced by Steven Spielberg. It was directed by Richard Donner. He was one of the
on Donner, on Prancer.
yes, he was one of the reindeer. He took some time off from pulling a sleigh to make this movie. It was written by Christopher Columbus, who took time off from discovering America.
He did not discover America. Do we really need to go there?
Well, he was the first European to discover America. That wasn't a Viking.
Okay.
So, and then came over and enslaved native people and brought them lots of diseases. So,
And kick them off the
yay,
land.
Christopher Columbus. And thanks for making this movie as well as such great
My
movies
notes say
Home Alone.
My notes say nothing about Christopher Columbus.
Yeah,
anyhow.
I forgot to put that in there.
And they also say that it was made in 1995. And I did not type these notes, so I'm pretty sure that someone made a mistake.
Sometimes notes
Jason.
are a lie.
I think you made the notes, Jason.
So, in the movie, we start out with.
No, wait. Am I guessing then it was made in 1985?
I already said that.
Not online, not on the air.
I did. That's the very
Did you?
first thing I said. Yeah,
I'm a little slow today. I'm tired.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I didn't have tea or anything today, so.
I had tea, but it was chamomile tea, and that doesn't help keep you awake.
No, I didn't have anything. Okay, go ahead.
So we open up in a jail with one of the Fratelli brothers, who they're going through the jail, inspecting all the prisoners.
The Fratelli brothers?
No, the jail
Jibbity
guards, the Jibbity guards.
Do the Bidgy guard?
And they find him hanging in his jail cell. Mm-hmm. And there's a note attached to him, and the jail guard reads the note, and I think the front of it says something, and then he turns it over, and it says something like, "Silly guy, did you really think that I would..."
He called him a schmuck.
Yeah. But did you think I would be dumb enough to hang myself? And then he looks up, and the guy's smiling at him, and then he wallops him across the face.
And then he takes himself down from the mechanism that he's created so that he's hanging but not by his neck.
Right. He's using like a pipe or something.
Yeah.
So then he escapes with his mom,
His mama
his mom is Throw Mama from the train.
is waiting to take him away.
With his brother. And he can't get in the car, so he has to climb through the sunroof.
Mm-hmm.
And they drive off and start a fire so the police officers can't chase them. The building that they're in ends up becoming, in real life, the Oregon Film Museum.
What building?
The jail.
Okay. I didn't know if you were already jumping to the building that the treasure's under.
No.
You're talking about the jail.
And that's all we see of them at the moment. Then we go to the school where we see the cheerleaders and football players.
Oh, they were on the football field. Yeah.
And I don't know what that had to do with anything.
Nothing.
Well, they just keep jumping around because they're showing like quick clips of each character. So
They're
you
showing
see
clips of the Fratellis being
There's a
chased by
car
the
chase.
police officers through town, and each time you see them, they're with different characters from the
Right.
Goonies.
So you see-
Or the Goonies?
you see Chunk at like an arcade eating pizza, and he sees the police chase go by, and he smashes his pizza and drink up against the window. And you see Data doing something contraption-y, and he sees it go by, and his contraption ends up pulling him in a trash can. And Mouth is with his dad working on some plumbing, and the police cars go by. And then they all end up at Mikey and Brandon's house.
Yes.
And they're talking about this police chase that's going on because everybody's seen it and they're all real hyped up about it. And of course, they won't let Chunk in the yard unless he
Because they're mean
does
to him.
the truffle shuffle, which is extremely mean. And it's really not them, it's just Mouth. Mm-hmm. And Mouth is apparently an a-hole. Mm-hmm. Which comes across through a lot of things, like with the maid, where he's interpreting for the maid, and everything the mom says he interprets differently.
Spanish.
Yes, the maid only speaks Spanish, so he tells her that where they keep all the drugs in the drawers.
Correct. Well, she's supposed to be helping them move because the big problem with the town is going bankrupt, and there's some rich corporation that's come in and is buying everyone's homes and land, and none of them want to move, but they don't have a choice because they don't have enough money to stay, basically.
Yes, and then he tells her that Dad keeps the sex torture devices in the attic. And so they go on and on through all of this. But yes, the whole point is that everyone's having to move. The whole town basically is having to move. And they're all depressed about it, and they're all talking about how this is going to be the last time they're going to get to hang out together. And they all decide they're going to go up and check out Mikey's attic. And Mikey's like, no, we can't go up there. Dad said we can't go up in the attic. And he's yelling at them to stay out of the attic, while meanwhile they're all going up in the attic.
Mouth, of course, is leading them.
Yes, Mouth never stops talking. No one ever stops talking. The one thing in this movie is literally everybody's talking all the time.
They pretty much yell.
And so, like, the only thing that keeps everyone from talking all the time is there's a significant part of the movie where Chunk is separated from the rest of them.
True.
So it's basically Mikey, Mouth, and Data talking over each other, and Chunk's somewhere else talking still all the time, but he's talking to the Fratellis.
Right.
So they go up in the attic and they're looking through things, and they discover a treasure map.
Well, his dad works for a museum.
Yes.
And he has a lot of stuff that he has to give back to the museum or something.
Right.
And so they're not supposed to touch it.
And they've apparently the dad was fascinated by this treasure stuff a while back, but they stopped looking, or had lost interest. But he told Mikey about it several years before. And so Mikey is familiar with the story of One Eyed Willie and his treasure and how it's supposed to have been lost. So he decides that he is going to try and find the treasure with the treasure map. Well, they also find an article about Chester Copperpot.
I've heard other things about One Eyed Willie on Runaway Bride.
That was the one-eyed snake.
Are you sure it wasn't One-Eyed Willie?
It was the one-eyed snake. She said, "You're afraid of the one-eyed snake, aren't you? That's why you keep running away and not getting married." Well, I learned how to tame the one-eyed snake. The secret is to sleep with a knitting needle.
Under your pillow every night. Go ahead.
So, we won't be covering that movie.
Maybe I will.
Maybe you won't.
Maybe I will. Maybe people now are going to be writing into us and saying that they want to hear about Runaway Bride and the one-eyed Willie snake.
I bet they
Or the
won't.
one-eyed snake named Willie.
I bet we will not get overwhelmed with requests for Runaway Bride.
Man, I really hope you guys do now just to make him look like
I
a
feel
dummy.
very confident that we won't.
Please, people, write in.
And so...
I love to prove Jason wrong.
Anyways...
One-eyed Willie.
They decide to go look for this treasure. They're all taking off on their bikes. It's initially just the young kids. They actually tie Brandon up with whatever his stretchy weight thing is.
It's an ab or
It's like
puller
a
or
chest
something.
exercising
It's from the
thing.
80s.
And so they go off hunting for this stuff. They find...
For the building that's on the map.
they find the building, and when they get there, they find the Fratellis, who are...
Or do the Fratellis find them?
Kind of both. They find each other.
Mama is behind them when they open the door.
Yeah.
We'll just call her Mama.
Mama. She gets thrown from... Well, she does get thrown from the ship, not the train.
That's later. And she has them sit down and pretends or makes them think that... Well, not really makes them think. She says they're going to serve them, which everyone knows they're not going to be served.
Yes, so she asks them what they want, and they all ask for water very anxiously, except for Mouth. And Mouth goes on about how he wants veal parmesan and something else fancy, and she grabs him by the mouth, squeezing his mouth so his tongue sticks out, and she says, "The only dish we serve here is tongue. Do any of you want any tongue?" And they're all screaming, and then
the water comes out though a rust color.
It looks like whiskey.
And she says they have to drink it.
And
Mouth starts swishing it around between cups and, of course, making more smart remarks because he really just wants to be killed.
And then Mikey says he needs to use the bathroom. And Chunk's like, "Is this the kind of place you want to use the bathroom?" And Mama's like, "What's wrong with this place to use the bathroom?" It's like, well, it's the kind of place where there might be, like, dead animals in the bathroom or dead other things or just dead things.
Dead one-eyed Willies?
Maybe. Anyways, he ends up going down there. He finds Sloth, who is the third Fratelli brother. So they're the two that we've already met that were breaking out of the jail. And then Sloth is a little different. And if you haven't seen Goonies, if you've seen Goonies, then you already are familiar with Sloth. If you haven't seen Goonies, Sloth he is developmentally disabled, physically and mentally. His eyes are not aligned on his face. He is missing a few teeth.
But he has an ear that can wiggle.
Yes.
That's pretty fun.
He has pointy ears. Mm-hmm. He's got a cone head.
Yes. A lot of babies are born with a cone head.
Yes, but he still
My
has a cone
babies
head.
were not born with a cone head.
You do find out later that he got dropped a couple times.
My babies were not born with a cone head.
No.
Just wanted you to know.
And
He likes baby Ruths.
I'm going to say, looking at him, the developmental disabling appears to go beyond just having been dropped. Like, if that's not a birth defect, he got ran over a couple times.
Let's move on. He's nicer than the rest of them.
He is. He's a great guy, just misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. And they have him chained up in the basement.
Literally, you can't understand what he's saying.
But he's chained up in the basement, too.
And he just watches TV.
All day.
And eats.
And his brothers are mean to him, and they tease him and, like, put his food out of reach, and he gets upset. And
one of his brothers does sing opera to him.
That's the same one that put his food out of reach, though.
So...
Yeah.
It's give and
so
take.
Mikey sees that and pushes this food to him so he can eat. And then when he sees him, he runs away.
Yes. So he goes back upstairs, and I don't remember what happens, that they all end up getting away.
She tells them to go home.
Okay. Well, then how did they end up with Chunk?
Chunk was already with them.
No, how do they end up with Chunk and not the rest of the kids? I'm drawing a blank here.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Fratellis end up having Chunk.
That's when they come back.
Okay.
They go to leave, and then their brother is caught up to them.
Oh, yeah.
And the cheerleader, and the cheerleader's friend.
Andy. And I don't remember the friend's name.
Well, you're nice. Because Mikey says that he heard, that there was something below the floor, and they've got to go back because it has to be there. It has to be there. And so when they see them leave, that's when they go back into the building. When they see the car leave.
Okay, so they go back in.
Right. And, of course, when they get downstairs, Chunk smells ice cream. I don't know how you can smell ice cream when the lid's closed and it's in a deep freezer.
Well, Chunk has certain gifts, and most of his involve food.
He opens up the freezer and starts carrying the pints out, but he doesn't realize behind him is a dead man in the freezer. That's how that happens.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that when they're trying to push the dead man back into the freezer, that Chunk accidentally gets trapped behind him and locked in the freezer. Does that all sound familiar?
Brr.
Right. And in the meantime, that he's locked in the freezer, they've found an access to down below that floor, and it's down into the fireplace.
Right.
And so they go on in, and they realize once they've dropped down that Chunk is not there.
And they're hoping that maybe he is going to call the police because the Fratellis get back.
Right. And when he gets out of the freezer, he tries to get out through a window, and the Fratellis get him.
He's not super agile.
He's not.
Or fast.
No.
Or smart.
No. And so the kids are starting to try to find their way down below the building and see if they can find a way out at this point because they're scared. And they think Chunk's gone to go find the police, but really he's upstairs and Mama is threatening that she's going to cut his hand in the blender if he doesn't tell them everything. So he starts telling them everything he's done wrong.
Yeah, he starts
from
out
birth.
He starts out telling them what they want to know.
Right, but they don't believe him.
And they don't believe him. Which Chunk, one of his primary characteristics is that he tells stories.
True.
That are usually not true. They're usually larger than life.
Yes.
And so they don't believe him. Now, they don't know him to know this about him, so I don't know how they...
Right. He's telling these huge stories and sobbing the whole time because he's scared. And so they tell him that they want to hear it from the beginning.
And so he starts telling everything that he's done wrong, like from early childhood.
Yeah. So all that's going on while the kids are below finding their way through underneath the building and into, what would you even call it where they are?
It's like their tunnels
Yeah.
full of booty traps.
Yeah. That have been set up so they can't get to the treasure.
Yes, and that's another ongoing joke is that Data, every time they run into a trap, Data goes, "It's a booty trap." And someone will correct him and go, "You mean booby trap?" And he'll go, "That's what I said, booby trap." And so there are lots of booty traps. So you got to watch your booty or it will get trapped.
Yeah. So the whole time they're going through different tunnels and different ways.
But it's probably better to get your booty trapped than to get your booby trapped because that would probably hurt.
Going through different
Get a nipple
ways
snapped
and
up.
through different tunnels and things and trying not to set off the different booby traps and trying not to die and trying to figure out, the different traps that One Eyed Willie has set up. And in the meantime, Chunk's upstairs giving them his sob story. And they're about ready to cut his hand off when down below one of the traps has gone off and a bunch of bats go flying past all the kids. And Chunk's already told them that they went down through the fireplace and they didn't believe him. But all of a sudden, swarms of bats go flying up through the fireplace. And he says, "See, I told you they're in the fireplace and you don't believe me. And I told you." And he's just sobbing and ranting and raving. And finally, they stop and look at him and realize that he had told the truth. And so they decide that they need to lock him up with...
Yeah, they decide they shouldn't hurt him because he might be useful.
Right, but they want to lock him up with their brother down in the basement, and they're going to go down into the fireplace to see what's going on below.
Yeah, and initially him and Sloth, he's terrified of him, but then they very quickly bond over food because
Over
they both
Baby Ruth.
really love food.
A Baby Ruth.
Yes.
And after he can't get over to him, so he pulls his chains out of the wall.
So why he's been down there this whole time chained to the wall when he could have just pulled his chains out of the wall?
Because he didn't have chocolate. You will...
There's a freezer full of chocolate ice cream.
Well, he didn't know.
Right
He doesn't
there.
have the smells like Chunk does. But he'd never had a Baby Ruth to work for. Sometimes you just need chocolate. And once he gets his hands free from these chains, they start feeding each other Baby Ruth.
It's so romantic.
And
it's one of the most romantic movie scenes I've ever seen.
And they start laughing. And Chunks is kind of a nervous laugh, but a laugh anyway.
They start playing Bryan Adams in the background. Girl, it's true. Everything I do it for you.
I'm fairly certain that song wasn't out yet.
Probably not. I think that came out in the 90s.
So anyhow, at one point, Sloth picks him up into the air, and Chunk's way nervous, and Sloth lays one on him, kisses him right on the lips. It was really funny.
Yes, to which Chunk says, "You smell like PE."
Which he probably does. And just Sloth starts laughing again.
Yeah, I don't think that Sloth had the best hygiene. I don't think they went down and bathed him regularly.
But then he tells Sloth that they need to go down below to save his friends. And so they go down below to start following Mama and the brothers who are following the kids. True story.
Yes. And so now the Fratellis are on the tail of the kids, who are on the tail of One Eyed Willie.
Except One Eyed Willie's dead.
And One Eyed Willies don't have tails.
I don't know. Maybe he did.
Don't know.
You know something about Mary? One of the guys on there had a tail.
That wasn't something about Mary. That was Shallow Hal.
You're right. That was Shallow Hal. True story.
And it was the guy from Seinfeld.
He had a tail.
Yes.
Anyway, back to this story.
It wagged when he got really excited.
Okay, back to this story.
So they go through all the booty traps, manage to not get their booty trapped or their booby trapped. So there is an opportunity for them to leave because they end up in at the bottom of a wishing well. And Troy, who is a recurring character, but he's kind of the jock who
He's a douche.
is kind of dating the cheerleader, but he's
Andy.
an a-hole. Yes, Andy, the cheerleader.
He's a douche.
And he's up talking to his friends about, and they're like, how far have you gotten with Andy? He's like, well, we haven't gone all the way. And he's throwing his coin in there, and they're like, what did you wish for? And he's like, to go all the way. And then his coin comes flying back out of the wishing well. And he's like, who's down there? Well, Andy turns out is down there. And then she's getting ready to go back up, and Mikey gives this rousing speech, probably on par with anything in Rudy, which was also played by Sean Astin. And he gives this rousing speech about how their parents are up there doing, and this is their time up there, but this is our time down here. And so as long as we stay down here, it's our time. But
and
if we
this is
go
our
back,
last time that we're going to be together.
but if we go back up there, then our time's over. And somehow all of this nonsense circular talk that he does makes sense to all these kids. And
I think it was like the 12th time he took a hit off his inhaler that did it.
yeah, he might have been high on inhaler dust.
Albuterol.
Yeah. Yeah, he did take that inhaler a lot.
Yeah.
He might have been lacking oxygen to his brain.
Probably.
So he gives this rousing speech. They all buy into it. They may have all been oxygen deprived at this time. They'd been in a cave for a long time.
It's hard to say.
They may have been inhaling some kind of mold spores that caused them to hallucinate.
Probably. LSD.
It's hard telling.
But he thinks that Andy's going to be coming up on this bucket.
And it's
But
just his jacket.
It's his Letterman sweater.
Yeah.
And you would think, though, that when they're rolling up the bucket, they would know the difference in weight
Yeah,
from
I thought that too.
a cheerleader versus a wet Letterman sweater.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, apparently Andy's not very heavy if he couldn't tell the difference. Or he's just really dumb.
he lets out a wail. Andy!
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty freaky.
So that was Troy getting his just desserts
Getting dumped.
by Andy, who ends up making out with Mikey.
Because she
Not
thinks
Brandon.
it's Brandon in the dark cave. And then she says to her friend, I'm confused. Does Brandon have braces? And her friend's just laughing hysterically because she knows who went in the cave and came back out.
And Brandon doesn't have braces.
It wasn't Brandon.
And then at the end of the movie, she's like, Brandon, when did you get your braces off?
And he says, I don't know. Mikey! Yeah. Anyhow.
So Mikey is a little player.
Anyhow. You're back.
So, okay. So they're going through all the booty traps. And there's a piano where she has to figure out if she plays an A sharp or a B flat, which for all of you musical connoisseurs out there, you will know that an A sharp and a B flat are the exact same note on a piano. So she can take her pick. Play either one. She'll
Apparently
be fine.
she got that right.
She did get it right. So don't know what all the indecision was about.
But in the meantime, the booby trap guy,
Data.
yeah, he's making booby traps for the bad guys, following them
Yeah,
to keep them
his
from
oil slicker shoes.
Yeah, to keep them from catching up.
And so one of them falls and hurts his
Groin.
his one-eyed Willie.
Groin. But then the other brother goes after him and does the same thing, which is pretty funny.
Because they're not very smart.
Correct.
Apparently one brother hurting his one-eyed Willie isn't enough to stop the other one from trying to do the same thing. And then they discover the ship.
Do you say ship with a P?
Ship. Like
Gotcha.
I shipped my pants.
Gotcha. You shipped your pants? Wait a minute. I don't think we're on the same page.
They discover One-Eyed Willie's gigantic long, big, giant ship.
Okay. So, go ahead.
It was 105 feet long.
Okay, but we're talking about...
It was a humongous,
and they
long,
start,
gigantic, huge ship.
Okay, so they start looking around. And they go through different levels of it. And then they find the treasure.
And they find...
Yes,
they also find Willie.
Right, and one of Mouth wants to start taking the treasure in front of Willie. And Mikey's like, no, let him have his. Leave it.
Take anything else.
So then they start taking all of the treasure and hiding it in their pockets and in anywhere they can. And then right behind them,
here come the Fratellis.
And they're told to hand over all of it. And so they start doing that. And then Mama starts getting mean, and she ties up Andy, the redheaded cheerleader, and forces her to walk the plank. And she does so. And Brandon runs and jumps in after her. Mama's like, well, there's 2 down.
But then the real hero shows up.
Chunk
and Sloth. And Sloth comes in yelling,
hey, you guys.
And he comes sliding down the sail with his knife, just like you had seen previously if you were watching. He was watching an Errol Flynn pirate movie, and Errol Flynn had done the same thing. So that's all he'd been doing, is watching old pirate movies and learning how to be piratey. And so he was all set for this opportunity to be the big hero.
And so his family starts making excuses for whose idea it was for him to be locked up downstairs, because they're a little afraid of him now.
He's pretty big.
Yeah. And he doesn't really want to hear their excuses. And so when he takes care of his brothers, then Mama's trying to give him hugs and starts trying to sing him a song. And then he, throws her down. He doesn't want to hear it.
She's singing Rockabye Baby.
Yeah.
And she gets to the word fall. No,
Yeah.
Is it fall?
When the bow breaks, the cradle will fall.
Yeah. And he perks up real big. She's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drop you.
It was only the one time. And then she goes, well...
The 2 times.
There might have been another. And so he's mad at her, and...
He takes her and throws her off the plank.
Yeah. And so the Goonies are all trying to save each other, and Brandon has untied Andy.
He doesn't untie Andy at first.
That's true.
He goes to untie her and instead takes her arms and puts them over his neck. And I'm like, yeah, because it's going to be a lot easier to swim with you swimming with her arms wrapped around your neck.
Well, that's their first kiss, and that's when she asked him when he got his braces off, and yeah.
Just untie her, and she can just put her arms around you willingly.
Well, and then
kiss you.
The next scene you see, though, is Sloth is holding a boulder up to help them get out, to help them escape. And everybody's going out, and Chunk is like, but wait, you need to come too. And he's telling him just to go because he wants them to get away from his family. And they're going, and in the meantime, you see his family back in the ship. And one of them is all of a sudden taking One Eyed Willie's treasure, which, if you remember, Mikey said not to do that, and because he wanted him to keep his, but that actually sets a booby trap off.
Yes.
And the tunnels and caves start crumbling.
And then the ship starts moving.
Yes.
But then you see 2 police officers on 4-wheelers on the beach. And as they're cruising along the beach, you see all the kids walk around the corner. And they're like, hey, is that those goobers?
Yeah.
And so they call it in.
Because their parents had been looking for them.
And everybody shows up at the beach to meet the goobers.
including the development guys who couldn't wait to get the final notice signatures from Mikey and Brandon's parents about taking their homes, and they're being real turds. And in the meantime, the housekeeper, or whatever you call her, only speaks Spanish. For I don't know why, but she's going through the pockets of one of the kids' coats, which doesn't make sense. And she finds Mikey's marble bag. And she starts yelling in Spanish for him not to use the pen on the paper. And finally, Mouth starts telling them what she's saying. And it's because Mikey had traded out his marbles for jewels. And so they pour them out into someone's hands, and they don't have to sign the papers, so they tear them up.
They do. And then the Fratellis come walking around the bend.
Even with Sloth.
With Sloth. And the police are like, it's the Fratellis. And they go to pull their guns on him. And Chunk's like, no, you can't shoot him. And he goes up and jumps in front of Sloth. And Sloth picks up one of the police officers.
Well, all the kids go up and around Sloth to let them know that he did nothing wrong.
Right. And then Chunk tells Sloth, it didn't seem like he ran this by his parents or anything, but he tells Sloth that Sloth's going to live with him now.
Yeah, he says, you're going to live with me now.
Because I love you. And I'm going to take care of you. His parents have no idea.
Yeah.
That this is going on. So it's a little suspect. But, hey, guess what? You've got an adult, developmentally disabled guy living at your house now.
Mm-hmm. Not my house.
A big guy.
Correct.
Who eats a lot.
Yeah, he's not at my house, so I guess
he's nice.
Yeah. He'll protect you.
So, and then
you see the ship come out from the side and start sailing away on the water, and everybody's just watching it.
And Mikey, I think, blows it a kiss.
Mikey says, goodbye, One Eyed Willie.
And it sails away. It
Even
probably
sinks
dead. Because it's a really old ship. And
hey, we don't need to go there. I wasn't thinking about that. You don't need to do that.
And that's the end of the movie. So
that's the end of chapter 4.
As far as little tidbits and such, there's not a whole lot. I mean, there are a lot of things, but, we don't want to waste your time with too many random nonsense things. We do find out that the map that they used was initially the prop designer, Mr. J. Michael Riva, did not think that it looked old enough when they were first starting to shoot. So that night he took it back to his hotel and he aged it himself by dousing it with coffee. And because he didn't have any paint, he used his own blood.
That's gross.
I don't have this noted on here, but they gave the map to Sean Astin to take at the end of the filming. His mom found the map years later, thinking it was just an old piece of crumpled paper, and she threw it away.
That's sad.
Yes.
It's really sad.
One Eyed Willie's ship.
I think I already heard this.
Was 105 feet long. This ship was actually built for the movie. 105 feet long. It took them 2.5 months to build it. It was based on Errol Flynn's ship, the Seahawk. It required more than 7,000 square feet of material. The largest sail was 30 by 60 feet. And then some of the ship's rigging was recycled for the Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland in California. So they actually didn't let any of the kids see the ship at all until they were filming the scene where they got to the ship, because they wanted them to actually react to the size and everything of the ship. And actually, Josh Brolin, in his initial reaction, said the line, which I don't know why they cut it, because he walked out and saw it and said, "Holy shit." And that wasn't part of the script, so they had to reshoot it. But that line is in the movie like a couple dozen times.
Maybe.
So why they would cut it out when he said it by accident, I don't know. Corey Haim had auditioned for the role of Mouth. Corey Haim was the other Corey of all the 80s movies. He lost the role to Corey Feldman, but they met at the auditions, became bestest friends, went on to star in 6 other movies together, including The Lost Boys, as well as License to Drive and many others. So, Corey Haim is no longer with us, but Corey Feldman is.
He's never been with me.
He is no longer alive.
Oh, gotcha.
He had a drug overdose.
Okay.
Corey Feldman is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So there were actually references to Michael Jackson in the movie. If you remember, they talked about Chunk. One of Chunk's made-up stories was that Michael Jackson had come to his house to use the bathroom. Of course, Michael Jackson was friends with Corey Feldman. And so Corey Feldman had been to Michael Jackson's house, and Steven Spielberg sent all of the kids to see a Michael Jackson concert during the filming of the movie.
Cool.
So, your favorite scenes in the movie?
You first.
Probably the scene where Sloth shows up at the end would be my favorite, where he gets to be the hero of the movie after being the neglected, overlooked brother, and then gets to show up and save the day. And then if I had to pick another one, maybe, I'm trying to think. Why don't you give me one and then I'll see if I can come up with another one.
Probably the Baby Ruth scene with him kissing Chunk.
Yeah, I would say if there's another one for me, it's probably Chunk spilling his guts literally about spilling his guts.
Right.
When he tells the story about the movie theater.
That would probably be another one too.
So, Chunk, of the actors in the movie, he was one that did not go on to have a long acting career, but he definitely was a standout in this movie. And apparently he got the chicken pox at the beginning of this movie and was afraid not to show up for filming because he was afraid that they would recast him. So he came with the chicken pox. Fortunately, the whole cast didn't get the chicken pox because that could have been a bad deal. So, any others for you?
Not off the top of my head right now.
Then we can talk about reviews. We'll start with our reviews. If you are not familiar, we rate these movies in Shiznitz 1 through 5. 1 Shiznit is a horrible movie, a movie that you would not wish on your worst enemy, or maybe you would wish on your worst enemy, one that you would not want to watch for anything. 5 Shiznitz is a masterpiece, a classic, one of the greatest movies ever made, one that you could watch over and over and over again. So what would you rate this movie?
I give Goonies a 5. I've watched it quite a few times.
I have too, but I don't know, though I have watched it, even in my adult life multiple times. I don't know that I could watch it over and over again because it's a little intense.
Well, I wouldn't watch it like time after time after time, but it's one that I wanted to watch with the kids and that I definitely, could and would watch again.
I would probably give it a solid 4.
You're no fun.
It's a really good movie. There are some things like that are annoying about it, like
Well, true that they yell
the
all the
kids
time.
yelling and talking over each other through the entire movie. As someone with ADHD, like it drives me, and someone with anxiety, it drives me a little crazy.
I think it's just part of it too is remembering it coming out when I was a kid, and I remember seeing it at the movies, so that's probably part of it too.
Yeah, and I mean, I loved the movie as a kid, and I literally could have watched it every day. If it was available every day, I could have watched it. And now, if we watched it today, if I had a friend come over tomorrow who wanted to watch it with me, I probably would, but I wouldn't pick it to watch again for a year.
Okay.
Critics reviews, so you know what we think. Let's see what some of our critics think of the movie. Would you like to read the first review?
Sure. The Goonies is a smooth mixture of the usual ingredients from Steven Spielberg action movies, made special because of the high-energy performances of the kids who have the adventures. Roger Ebert, Chicago Sun-Times, 3 out of 4 stars.
So for Roger Ebert, that's pretty good. Sometimes Roger Ebert has taken movies that we really liked, and he has trashed them. And sometimes he's taken really crappy movies and liked them. So the next one, The Goonies, has every imaginable funhouse flourish. It has crooks, bats, cobwebs, skeletons, a lovable monster, an underground grotto, a treasure hidden by some of the most considerate, clue-loving pirates who ever lived. Janet Maslin of the New York Times, 3.5 out of 5.
Loud music, even louder kids, loud sound effects made for one of the most annoying motion pictures ever made. James O'Healy, Sci-Fi Movie Page, 1 out of 5.
So James apparently did not like this movie.
That's okay, I don't like James.
So, well, you're not a sci-fi fan, so it makes sense you wouldn't like the sci-fi review. And Amazon reviews, Conehead gives it 5 stars. Says this is the crowning achievement of American cinema. That sounds promising going in. I'm a child of the 80s. Same. And this is by far my all-time favorite film. Okay, I don't know that I can go that far.
Hey, just read that review.
I can't explain it, but no other movie gives me the kind of feelings that this movie does. I don't know that it gave me any feelings.
Jason, read it.
No matter how old you are, watching The Goonies brings you back to that childhood moment when anything was possible. To me, this is more than a movie and almost an escape from reality of adult responsibility. And I cherish that for the close to hours this gives me. I also have my kids loving the movie, so it will continue for another generation. I believe that this film should be required viewing for everyone and could easily solve most of the major issues plaguing our society. That may be a little push. We are all Goonies, and we just need to let that side out more. I think this person, while I agree that it's a really good movie, they may have a little bit of an idealistic view of it.
I think that we need to read the reviews the way they are, Jason, before someone hurts you, like me.
I'm not so sure about that.
I am.
I think that it's our podcast, and if I want to give commentary on the review,
I don't want you to.
can.
No, you're driving me crazy. Annie Mouse, 5 star, a classic. I love this movie with a passion. Sean Astin, Corey Feldman, Martha Plimpton, and all of the child actors, really, all bring their A game to make this a perfect treasure hunt meets coming-of-age film. Director Richard Donner, writer-producer Steven Spielberg, and screenwriter Chris Columbus all came together to create a true classic full of memorable scenes, quotable quotes, and phenomenal acting on all parts, adults and their child co-stars.
See, that's a much more realistic review.
You know, you're the one who picked the reviews to go on this podcast. Pain in the butt.
Because they're reviews we can talk about.
You don't have to yell through this one, do you? Because it's in all caps.
Yes, and this is literally how it was on Amazon.
It's in all caps.
Yes, the person put it on here in all caps. Bitter Old Queen is the person
there's
who
your first
posted
clue.
it. 1 star, not a family movie. I was so, with 2 O's, disappointed when I watched this movie.
Can't spell disappointed right.
Every other word was S # T, which I believe is Spanish for shit, which was just unnecessary, which they misspelled. In the beginning, there was a part that was pretty filthy, but once you got...
What?
I don't know.
What part in the beginning was filthy?
I mean, they were really muddy on the football field.
Was that it?
Maybe.
Filthy part.
But once you got past that, it was not too bad.
What was filthy in the very beginning? Where was there?
I have
I didn't
no
see
idea.
any butts or parts or boobs. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Maybe she was watching the wrong thing. G. Peterson. 1 star. Filthy mouthed kids. I don't like to listen to kids with filthy mouths.
I think they're funny.
Oh, it's just I think that maybe G. Peterson is married to Bitter Old Queen.
Have you ever had like a 3-year-old come up to you and go, shit? It's hilarious.
No, I haven't, Jason.
It's really funny.
Well,
you should try it sometime.
That's about all we have.
That is all we have for this week.
No, I'm talking. You just sit over there and try to look pretty.
I'm not real good at that.
That's about all we have for Goonies. In closing, you can follow us on Twitter at Schweet Shiznitz. Also, you can follow Jason at Gravy Boat Pirate because he's a dork.
Arr, mighty.
He's a dork. And you can follow me. I honestly don't do a whole lot on Twitter, but at Krista White 73. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Schweet Shiznitz.
You can also email us at schweetshiznitz@gmail.com.
I was not done speaking. You sit over there and behave. I mean it. Share our posts and tweets. Let your friends, family, and followers know about us. Let your enemies know about us. I don't care. Just tell everybody.
Also, we're on Instagram, which isn't on here.
I am not done talking.
The Instagram is at Schweet Shiznitz.
Listen, I'm going to start throwing things at you.
Cool.
You can wait until it's your turn. This is the best gift you can give us besides money and maybe a gag for Jason.
One of those ball gags?
Exactly. That will work for all kinds of things.
What do you got planned?
First of all, to get you to stop talking.
Since some of those fuzzy handcuffs with them.
Are you going to wear your gay leather hat too?
If that's what works for you.
You can find Schweet Shiznitz on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find quality podcasts. Shut the bleep up. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your ratings and reviews make us more visible and help others to find us.
Otherwise, nobody can see us. We're invisible.
I wish you were invisible right now. Schweet Shiznitz is paid for by listeners like you. To be a supporter of Schweet Shiznitz, go to patreon.com/Schweet Shiznitz. Supporters will get access to bonus content.
Bonus.
We will also mention you on the air and send you gifts and surprises. But if you don't want to be mentioned on the air, we won't do that.
Bonus.
I will try to get Jason not to talk, but you can see how difficult that is. That's all that we have for you this week. So until we meet again, I'm Krista White, and you are?
I am Jason White.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.